Klingons, meet the Klingons. They're the baddest bad guys out in space. You don't fuck with Klingons. They're an ultra-violent warrior race. From their empire not so far away, they will always ruin Starfleet's day. When you meet the Klingons, there's gonna be a red sky. You'll have a good cry. It's a good day to die. Klingons! This is a review of the Star Trek The Original Series episode, Errand of Mercy. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know what the hell those Organians are always smiling about, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. As you may have intuited from my little song at the beginning there, this is the episode where we meet the Klingons, the aliens who would go on to become the most enduring antagonists and sometimes allies in the entire Star Trek franchise. Let's see what sort of first impression they made. The Enterprise receives an encoded message from Starfleet. Tensions with the Klingon Empire have reached a breaking point. In anticipation of war, Kirk is to take the Enterprise to the planet Organia and prevent the Klingons from occupying it and using it as a base. Before they can get underway, the ship is attacked by a Klingon vessel. The Enterprise returns fire and destroys the Klingon. Then Uhura gets the official message from Starfleet. The Federation and the Klingons are at war. Kirk orders Sulu to hightail it to Organia. As they reach Organia, Uhura receives a report of a Klingon fleet nearby. Kirk announces that he and Spock will beam down to the planet to speak to the Organians, and he leaves Sulu in command of the ship with orders to leave and alert Starfleet if the Klingons show up. Sulu's like, leave you behind to die? Got it, no problem. Kirk and Spock beam down to Organia, which looks to be another one of those medieval village planets, and they're greeted by this guy, Aelborn, who conducts them to the council chambers. On the way, Spock's like, hey, can I skip this boring meeting and wander around waving my little mini TV at things instead? Aelborn's like, sure, brother, go have fun. In the council chamber, Kirk meets with Aelborn and 4 other old white guys, and he tells them, okay, here's the deal. The Klingons are on their way here. They want to take this planet to use as a base, and that's bad news for you, because the Klingons are going to mess this pretty planet up and enslave your entire population, and they'll probably kill a bunch of you and throw a bunch more of you in prison, so we need to start getting you ready to defend against that. Aelborn's like, no thanks. Kirk's like, maybe you didn't hear me. Unless you ally yourselves with the Federation and allow us to help you, the Klingons are going to come and destroy your whole way of life. I heard you. We're good. Spock enters and says, hey, Captain, can I talk to you over here for a second? I waved my little mini TV at everything in this village, and it seems like the culture on this planet is completely stagnant. They haven't made any technological progress for thousands of years. And you can tell all of that by waving your tiny TV around? That's what it does. That's why I have it. Okay, maybe we can use that. Kirk goes back to Aelborn in the council and says, sure seems like your society is in a bit of a rut. If you join Team Federation, we can help you out with that. Show you advanced agricultural techniques, build schools, create public facilities. You've got to admit there's not a lot to do around here. Y'all don't even have a dirt racetrack. Like, where do you go to drink beer on the weekends? Aelborn's like, thanks again, but nah. Sulu calls Kirk to tell him that the Klingon fleet has arrived. Kirk tells Sulu to follow his orders, get out of here, rally the rest of the fleet, and come back when the odds are more even. Then one of the other old white guys turns to Aelborn like, a bunch of Klingons just beamed down with weapons. Kirk's like, how do you know that? And Spock says, yeah, my tiny TV can't even tell that. Aelborn's like, oh, he's just really good at guessing what's happening. The Organians are worried that the Klingons will hurt Kirk and Spock if they find Starfleet people here, so they give Kirk and Spock some clothes, more in the local style, and they also take their phasers and hide them because the Organians deplore violence of any kind. Kirk's not crazy about that, but there's no time to argue. The Klingons are here. In walk a couple of guards, followed by the baddest motherfucker in the galaxy, Kor, who announces himself as the new military governor of Organia, then turns to Kirk like, who the fuck are you? Before Kirk can say anything, Aelborn steps in and says, this is Baroner, one of our leading citizens. Kor looks at Kirk like, how come you don't have a doofy smile on your face like the rest of these jackasses? He turns to Spock. What about you? What's your story? I am a Vulcan merchant. My name's Spock. Don't hurt yourself inventing that disguise, Spock. Kor is suspicious of Spock for being a Vulcan because Vulcans are members of the Federation, which means Spock could be a spy. He orders Spock to be taken away for interrogation. He says to Kirk, you're going to be my liaison between my forces and the civilian population because you're the only one not vacantly smiling at everything I say. Come on, I'll fill you in on your new duties. In Kor's office, he lays out the new laws under Klingon rule. No public assemblies, no unauthorized publications, don't get them wet, don't feed them after midnight, pretty standard. The guards bring Spock in and inform Kor that he's telling the truth. He's just some Vulcan merchant, not a Federation spy. Kor's like, hey, Baroner, do you want to try our interrogation machine? It's a mind sifter, though if we turn it all the way up, it can be a mind ripper. It probes a person's mind and records their every thought, so there's no way they can keep any secrets from us. Pretty cool, right? Kor tells Kirk to get lost, and outside, Spock brags about how his Vulcan mental discipline enabled him to conceal his true identity from the Klingon mind sifter. Then they decide to put on a display to show the passive Organians that they can fight back against the Klingons. So that night, they steal a Klingon grenade and use it to blow up a stockpile of weapons. The Organians are not impressed. Aelborn's like, you blew it up? On purpose? With violence? Not cool, man. Kirk and Spock try to explain to the Organians that they just need to resist the Klingons until Starfleet arrives with reinforcements. But Aelborn and the others still don't seem to get it. They're not at all interested in resisting. Meanwhile, Kor, who has the council chamber bugged, overhears this discussion and barges in to interrupt. Fearing that the Klingons will do something to harm Kirk, Aelborn reveals Kirk and Spock's true identities. Kor's like, Captain Kirk of the Enterprise. Well, I've heard of you, and you must be his first officer. Spock. Holy shit, did you just use your real name for your disguise? You don't even care, do you? You are just totally checked out. Kor orders Spock taken prisoner and brings Kirk back to his office for a drink and a chat. Kirk turns down the drink and also declines to give Kor any strategic information about Starfleet. Kor's like, we're not that different. Sure, our two countries have certain ideological differences, but humans and Klingons? As species? We're both predatory. We're both hunters. We both want to control this great big universe. Kor gives Kirk 12 hours to cooperate with him, or he'll plug him into the mind sifter and turn him into a vegetable, and have Spock dissect it. The Klingons take Kirk to where Spock's been locked up. Kirk's like, you ever notice how many of these alien planets we visit have, like, castles and stone dungeons? That's weird, right? Kirk and Spock barely have time to begin planning their escape when the door to their cell swings open and Aelborn walks in like, okay, let's go. The Klingons were going to hurt you and we couldn't allow that to happen, so come on. They go back to the council chamber where any questions about how Aelborn was able to get past the guards and open the door are pushed aside by the more urgent matter of fighting back against the Klingons, which the Organians are still not interested in doing. Kor comes over the intercom with an announcement for the entire village. The prisoners have escaped, and until they are returned, the Organian people will suffer. To prove that he's serious, Kor has 200 Organians publicly executed. They can hear the weapons firing from the council chamber. Kor declares that 200 more will be killed every 2 hours until Kirk and Spock are recaptured. Kirk's like, now they're publicly executing your people. Will you rise up against the Klingons? Finally? Aelborn's like, I don't think so. Kirk's had enough. He yanks Aelborn around in his chair and says, show me where you hit our phasers or I'm going to beat the piss out of you right here in front of the rest of your Bible study group or whatever the fuck this is. Aelborn's like, they're in that cabinet over there. Spock grabs the phasers and Kirk turns to the council and says, you're all wimpy little losers and I hate you so much, but now my friend and I are going to go out there and fight those Klingons. Maybe you'll learn something about, courage or whatever. Let's go, Spock. After dark, they crouch outside Kor's headquarters. Kirk says, okay, so the plan is to sneak in there and capture Kor, but if it's necessary, and I low-key hope it is, we kill us a few of these Klingons. Got it? In his office, Kor is frustrated with how passive the Organians are. He's not happy getting stuck with military governor duty, and it's even worse having to rule over a population of sheep. He sends his officers out to round up 200 more Organians for another execution, but then Kirk and Spock spring into the office, phasers drawn like, ha-ha! Stop right there, Kor! The game is up! Kor's not bothered. He's like, good job, but you should know that I just received word that your Starfleet is almost here and my Klingon fleet is about to meet them. So maybe we should just wait and see how that turns out before we take this any further, huh? Oh, by the way, the reason why we Klingons will ultimately defeat you Federation types is that we know each individual is only a part of the whole. That's why all of us, even a big shot like me, are always under surveillance. He indicates the camera watching them in the office. Right on cue, his Klingon guards burst into the room, and a scuffle is about to break out when suddenly everyone winces and drops their weapons. They try to fight hand to hand, but they can't touch each other without feeling extreme pain either. Up on the Enterprise, we see the crew being shocked away from their controls by the same pained reaction. What's going on? Aelborn and one of his buddies strolls in like, we did that. When you try to attack each other, your weapons and your bodies will feel incredibly hot to the touch. That goes for all of your forces beyond this planet as well. We're done screwing around with you people. There ain't going to be no war. You couldn't figure out how to stop this war on your own, so we're doing it for you. We don't like involving ourselves in other people's business, but you have left us no choice. Suddenly, Kirk and Kor are on the same side, against the Organians, arguing that these shitheads have no right to stop their war. They have good reasons for wanting this war. Kirk's like, why aren't you on our side? The Klingons killed 200 of your people. Aelborn says, no one has been killed. No one has died on Organia for thousands of years. Kirk's like, well, nevertheless, you can't just step in and stop our war. Aelborn's like, why not? Are you saying you have the right to kill millions of innocent people? To destroy entire planets? That's the right you're defending? Kirk's like, well, when you put it that way. Aelborn says, look, that's it. War's over. Now, get lost. Being in your presence is very upsetting for beings such as ourselves. Kirk says, what do you mean, beings such as yourselves? Aelborn's like, what you see of us is just for the sake of appearances. We no longer need physical bodies. Here, we'll show you. And Aelborn and the other guy transform into glowing balls of light and then fade away. Spock's like, shit, they're way more highly evolved than we are. Kirk turns to Kor like, well, I guess the Organians aren't going to let us fight. Kor shakes his head, disappointed, then gets that wicked smile and says, it's a shame, Captain. It would have been glorious. Later, back on the Enterprise, Kirk's feeling a bit sheepish. Spock's like, what's wrong, boss? And Kirk says, I feel like kind of an asshole. I hated the Organians for being against violence. I was furious with them for stopping a war that I didn't even want. Spock says, don't be too hard on yourself. The Organians have a head start on us. Maybe in a few million more years, we'll figure out how to not have wars too. The end! It's hard to believe, looking back, that the Klingons didn't appear until almost the end of the first season of Star Trek. This was the fourth to last episode of Season 1 to be broadcast, and yet today, Klingons feel as essential to Star Trek as anything else about it. They're one of the defining ingredients of the whole thing. A lot of the credit for that belongs to John Colicos, who plays Kor. Obviously, the Klingons were brought to life by many memorable actors after this episode, and they were fleshed out by many writers in ensuing decades, but I wonder if any of that would have been done at all if Colicos as Kor had not made such a strong impression here. Kor is the perfect villain for a show like Star Trek. Outwardly ridiculous, silly costumes, silly makeup, extremely theatrical, a sneer on his lips, a gleam in his eye. But for all the superficial outlandishness of him, he's not one-dimensional. He has standards. He has a touch of civilization. He's not a brute who just wants to kill people. He admires Captain Kirk as a fellow warrior. He wants to talk to him, persuade him to come over to the Klingon side of things. He resents the Organians just as much as Kirk does, and for the same reason. He doesn't respect people who don't fight back. He wants to win and dominate, but he doesn't want his enemy to just roll over and surrender. Those traits eventually become defining characteristics of Klingons in general. They aren't all exactly like Kor, that would be boring, but as a rule, they're a combative and flamboyant group of people, violent ethically dubious. They have a code of honor, but they reserve the right to define what constitutes honorable behavior, and that definition tends to change in order to suit the present circumstances. Most importantly, though they are often villainous, the Klingons aren't evil. Kor isn't a monster. He's not here to punish the Organians out of cruelty. He's just doing his duty. He's serving his empire. He dislikes the Organians for being too passive, but he actually respects Kirk for standing up to him. He's still going to kill Kirk if necessary, but he doesn't hate him. These qualities make the Klingons a fitting counterpoint to the typically more professional and reserved Starfleet characters, but starting here with Kor, the Klingons also have some thematic depth. They aren't just wacky space people, they represent something in the real world. Usually in classic Star Trek and in the Next Generation era of the franchise as well, the Klingons are standing in for the Soviet Union, with the Federation representing the United States. That's certainly the case here, with Organia as the strategically valuable territory the two great powers are fighting over. One of the things that makes Errand of Mercy such a good episode is the way it uses that metaphor in a thoughtful and intelligent way to say something kind of provocative, especially given that the episode was produced at the height of the Cold War and with Vietnam still very much an ongoing conflict. Initially, it seems pretty clear that, as usual, Starfleet are the good guys, and it seems pretty obvious that the Klingons are the bad guys, but the pacifism of the Organians is initially shown in a negative light from both sides. We see Captain Kirk, our hero, getting extremely frustrated with their placid refusal to stand up to the Klingons, and we see Kor showing obvious contempt for how compliant they are. The longer the episode goes on, and the more we see both Kirk and Kor interacting with Eilborn and the others, the more alike Kirk and Kor start to seem. They aren't the same. Kor is clearly a dictator, and he thinks nothing of ordering a mass execution to get his way, while Kirk and Spock are only seen to use violence in a non-lethal way, and their sales pitch is for the Federation to protect Organia, not dominate it, but they're both here to impose their will on the Organians. And they both repeatedly ignore the Organians when they say no thanks. Kirk may think he's here to help the Organians, but when he tries to persuade them by promising protection and technological support, which they don't want, he's misleading them. He's not here out of the goodness of his heart to spare the Organians the ravages of Klingon rule. He's here because Starfleet needs this planet for strategic reasons. He never says that to Eilborn. He says, "We want to help you," not "we want to use you," just in a less brutal way than the Klingons want to. He's manipulating the Organians, or trying to, and Eilborn calls him out on it right away. In their first scene in the council chamber, Eilborn says to Kirk, "It seems we have a choice between dealing with you or dealing with your enemy." Kirk tries to deny that, but it's the truth. That's the choice the Organians are being presented with. Choose your exploitation, gentle or ruthless. The fact that the Organians insist on choosing neither is enraging to Kirk and to Kor. Just in case you think this equivalence between the Federation and the Klingons is accidental, the episode wipes out all ambiguity at the end, when the Organians reveal the true scope of their power, and Eilborn righteously shames both Kirk and Kor, and through them, the Federation and the Klingon Empire, equally, for insisting on fighting a war that neither side seems to actually want. In fact, if he comes down harder on one side than the other, it's on the Federation. When Eilborn talks about war resulting in the deaths of millions of innocent people and mass destruction, he's speaking specifically to Kirk, who has questioned the right of the Organians to intervene and stop the conflict. The point is pretty clear. War is wrong and bad, and in war, the opposing enemies have more in common for the good and the bad than they want to admit. Saying that on primetime TV in the United States in the late 1960s, using surrogates for the United States and the Soviets, is a pretty damn gutsy thing to do. Fortunately, it was science fiction, so most people who watched were too clueless to pick up on it. Yay, media illiteracy, I guess. The episode has a lot of the same problems with pacing as most other classic Star Trek episodes, but they're less noticeable here because the performances are so good, particularly Kalakas, who is not only outstanding in his own right, but has great chemistry with William Shatner in their scenes together. And the script does a good job of teasing that the Organians are more than they appear to be. And the promise of the resolution to that mystery is enough to keep pulling things along when the episode drags or begins to feel a little repetitive. Errand of Mercy was written by the great Gene Kuhn, who is still in a dead heat with Dorothy Fontana for the title of Most Important Writer on Star Trek, and it reflects the qualities that made Kuhn such a perfect writer for this show. A sharp sense of humor, a willingness to embrace the goofy side of the series, but also a strong and relevant metaphor at the foundation, tethering this goofy sci-fi story to the real world, giving it a strong moral center, and using it to deliver a message that was relevant back then and is sadly still relevant today, when some of the players have changed, but the plot remains the same. The episode was directed by John Newland. This was the only Star Trek episode Newland ever directed, but a few years before Star Trek, he was the host and regular director of One Step Beyond, one of the less well-remembered anthology shows of the time. If you've never seen it and you enjoy The Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, that sort of thing, check out One Step Beyond. It's streaming in a few different places, and I really dig it. Newland was an experienced and prolific TV director, and he does a very solid job here. It's too bad he only worked on Star Trek this one time. From this first appearance through to the current era of the franchise, Klingons have changed quite a bit. Their look has changed a few times. They've cycled through several babyface and heel turns. Their culture has been more thoroughly depicted than any other alien on Star Trek. But what makes them useful and interesting now, and what has made them useful and interesting over the last 60 years, is the same thing that makes them useful and interesting in Errand of Mercy. At first, they seem to be the opposite of the Federation, of us, as it were. But the more you watch them, the more you realize that the reason they appear to be our opposites is because when we look at them, we're looking at our own reflection. Those are my thoughts on Errand of Mercy. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Happy New Year! Please join me next week as I continue with this batch of reviews of Klingon-centered episodes. There are other memorable Klingon episodes from TOS, but for this batch, I'm only doing one episode per series. I will get to all the episodes eventually, I promise. For now, we're moving on with a look at an episode from Season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation titled Heart of Glory. See you next time for that one. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.